Hello, YouTube. So today we got a new guest with us, Mitya from Drops, and today we'll talk a lot about the drops and the liquid staking. So, Mitya, say something about yourself. Who are you? How you enter crypto world, and how your journey began.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm a co-founder of Drop. It's a singular, one drop, not drops, by the way. Yeah, Drop is a liquid staking protocol for the interchain to work with assets such as Atom from cosmoshub, Tia from Celestia, Init from Anisha, and many more. In the future, maybe not so many, a few more. Um, I actually started in crypto pretty late in mid 2021. I worked at P2P.org. That's one of the biggest validators. I was there on the product side and eventually became a chief product officer. Then, um, yeah, P2P, I did a lot of work on the Ethereum side, which was exciting. But my heart kind of belonged to the Cosmos or Interchain, and yeah, I wanted to focus on this ecosystem full time, and yeah, this is what kind of led me to working on Drop. From the time at P2P, I got to know a lot of people from Lido as well, and in fact, Drop also has some roots in Lido. So my co-founder Kai, he used to be a product manager at Lido on Terra. Not a very unknown fact, but Lido on Terra was the biggest LST protocol in the world. At some point, it was bigger than Lido on Ethereum, and then something happened to Terra. I'm not sure what. And yeah, then there was this idea of launching something similar to Lido on Terra, but on Cosmos Hub. There was this famous or infamous proposal 69 Cosmos Hub that attempted to activate Cosmos on the hub. And that would be like a step towards deploying Light on Cosmos there. The proposal didn't pass. There was a usual kind of round of Cosmos drama around the proposal vote. And in the end, it kind of led to, like to a large extent, it led to the creation of Neutron as a DeFi focused Cosmos chain that was in close proximity to the hub. And since then, the idea of doing something similar to Light on Cosmos so that you would be able to work with multiple assets, the idea never stopped. And yeah, we saw an opportunity like, roughly a year ago to really focus on bringing this product to the market. And yeah, now it's live for around half a year now. Drop became the first member of the Lido Alliance. That's a new type of let's say, type of a partnership between Lido DAO and other projects in the ecosystem that are somewhat synergetic with Lido. We're pretty proud of being a member of the alliance, and that's important for us to have such an important partner as Lido, and they're helpful for us in very many different ways. Uh, yeah, what else to say? Drop is live. You can go and try it out at any point in time. Right now, there is a testnet live for Emisha, by the way.
Second
That's the
season
latest.
also, yeah, second season also started not far ago.
Oh yeah.
We understand how the idea of drop came out also, how it was born. And can you tell us a bit more why you decided to build it on the Cosmos Hub, not on other blockchains like Ethereum or others? Why Cosmos?
Um, so Ethereum has a very different liquid staking market, and there's a clear winner there. There's Lido that is doing absolutely amazing job in terms of not only being an LST provider. I think Lido is also almost like a backbone to the whole ecosystem. That's like sometimes it's the biggest DeFi protocol, sometimes it's the second biggest DeFi protocol. But I think it's very valuable for the ecosystem to have a protocol that contributes a lot to decentralization. So, long story short, we didn't really see an opportunity for for another LSC provider in the Ethereum ecosystem, and we think that Lido is great. In many other ecosystems, that space is more or less kind of taken. and there are good projects that would rather support than compete with. I think in Cosmos it's very different because Cosmos is so fragmented, and uh, not that there are no LSTs in Cosmos, but we think that there's probably space for many of them, and collectively, when we were looking at the market, they were collectively very small. Uh, it's it's not that obvious when you kind of look at the market because you see, okay, there are LST providers, but you don't have to like you have to compare them to the native staking market, really. That's kind of your total addressable market, if you will. And depending on the chain, but in the biggest chains, the collective share of the LSTs is low single digit percent. So it could be 1%, 2%, 3%, something like that. So basically, it's just super, super early for many of these assets for multiple reasons. And yeah, we thought that that's the right time to do a very DeFi focused LST. And yeah, and that's also the ecosystem that let's say we're generally passionate about. There is a lot of potential in the interchain. There are lots of very successful projects, such as Celestia. Now, Initia coming. I think Initia is going to be super interesting. DYDX and so on. So, yeah, I think that's a growing part of blockchain in general. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to growing together with it.
So we can say that Drop is very atom aligned project, as now many projects says. Uh, will we
I
see
wouldn't
some kind
say
of interaction
I
with?
actually yeah, just a general comment on the alignment. I don't like to think about um, product in terms of alignment. I think you need to think about the users, and alignment is a means to the end. It's not a definition of your product. So we like to work with the assets that have the biggest adoption in the space, and Atom is definitely one of these assets. And I think there is a bright future for Atom as an asset and for Cosmos Hub as an ecosystem. Um, I just think it's a much better framing when you think about, okay, if I'm an Atom holder, like what is the value of like having an LST rather than thinking in a frame of like, are you Atom aligned? Uh, I think it's long term, it's much better to think about the users. Then you're going to be aligned with the right things.
Okay, nice position, nice answer. I also would like to know why you choose to build above the Neutron rather than building a sovereign chain, because many other LSM projects, like Stride, for example, doing it on self-chain. Why you choose the Neutron rather than sovereign?
Um, that's a trade-off as always, and mm, I think it also kind of depends on what are the things that you're trying to optimize towards. So if you're launching your own chain, one of the things that you're sacrificing is, let's say, two important things that we didn't want to sacrifice. First is the ability to focus on your core product rather than on maintaining the chain. Like managing a set of validators is difficult, like going through all the upgrades is difficult. It also costs something, although like if you use interchain security, it's not as expensive as running your own validator set, but it most important cost is basically some let's say lost focus because you have to do more things. If you deploy an application as a smart contract, you basically rely on the chain to do all this work, and as application team, you don't really have to worry about it as long as like you're sure that you chose the right partner. So that's one aspect. So from our perspective, it was like a much uh, much more attractive option to launch as a smart contract, just because you don't lose the focus. But also another thing that you also gain with it is basically close proximity to some of the DeFi partners that also deploy their smart contracts on the same chain. And so that's what's called synchronous composability. Basically, your smart contract is on chain A, their smart contract is also on chain A. you can package some of the user experiences into one transaction that is going to be executed very quickly. And this is also important. From the user experience perspective, yeah, it's also kind of straightforward. If the DeFi protocol and the liquid staking protocol sit on the same chain. Um, so that was our thought process. And Neutron has two very interesting things that really attracted us. First is Neutron has the infrastructure that allows smart contracts to be cross-chain. And in our case, like this smart contract sits on Neutron, but it can work with Atom as an asset. It can work with Tia as an asset. It can work with Init as an asset. But we don't have to deploy these smart contracts again and again. This is very unique for the smart contracts, and that's basically the only chain that allows us to do so. Because Neutron has a custom implementation of interchain transactions that allows our smart contract to initiate transaction on the other chain. That's one thing. The other is like going back to the synchronous composability. Like the question is, are you synchronous composable with the right protocols? And in case of Neutron, over the last couple of years, um, there were a lot of very strong builders in the DeFi space in Cosmos that ended up deploying on Neutron as their home base. And they kind of all had different trajectories. So, for instance, Mars started with deploying their own chain. But going back to your question, they started deploying their own chain. Then they realized, oh, maybe we don't need a chain. They then deployed on Neutron, and now Neutron is their hub. S-Report never had their own chain after the Terra crash, but yeah, they ended up having Neutron as their primary hub as well as, and now most of the S-Report liquidity is on Neutron. So many of these chains are now deployed on Neutron as their, let's say, primary deployment. Neutron also has their own infrastructure that allows DeFi protocols to be very efficient. So they call it integrated apps. Essentially, what it allows the DeFi protocols to do is to use some of the chain level infrastructure as if they were deployed as an app chain, essentially. So, for instance, there's an enshrined oracle called Slinky that these protocols can basically call reliably every block, and they would know that Slinky has a block space every block to update the price oracles, and that allows the protocols like Mars rely on these price oracles, and then like this integration between Drop and Mars is very interesting because that unlocks some of the use cases that are pretty unique. So the way Mars perps work now is kind of largely built on top of this kind of integrated app thesis. We're also excited about the Duality DEX that is going to be the enshrined DEX on Neutron. For any LST, having very efficient DEX liquidity is super important. And now on Neutron is going to be a very interesting mix of liquidity on S-Support, which is, let's say, tailored towards a user that provides liquidity and doesn't have to monitor this liquidity every minute. And order book DEX Duality that can provide you a lot of efficiency if the positions are managed properly. So that's kind of the best of two worlds. And as far as I understand, they're also going to integrate at some point so that you can use S-Support's kind of UI and get all the benefits from Duality backend. So yeah, there's a lot of good stuff there. And I think that's, from my perspective, the most advanced DeFi ecosystem that is using kind of using the stack that we would need to deploy an LST. Sorry, that was a long explanation, but yeah,
Yeah,
there's
but
a lot
it
of
was
exciting stuff there.
it was really interesting, especially about the DEX on the Neutron. So I think it's kind of something new to hear. Let's talk a bit about
Actually,
the
yeah,
yeah,
if
yeah.
that was flying kind of below the radar a little bit, but if any of the viewers are curious, yeah, definitely encourage them to check. So it was a separate project. It was called Duality. They merged with Neutron, and then it took them a while to actually deploy the DEX, but it's now live, and I don't know for sure. I'm kind of half confident that it's probably now the most efficient DEX in terms of how much volume it generates per dollar of liquidity on the DEX. So yeah, that's a pretty cool project.
For sure, yeah, I will also check about it. Let's talk a bit about the liquid staking in general, because it's
Yeah.
really hot topic for people, and many people are concerned about the liquid staking protocols due to some security stuff there. How drops solve it? Because not really a lot of people would like to change their asset for something else in terms of losing the main asset.
Yeah, I mean you're not losing the main asset. Um, uh, so in terms of security, I'm just thinking what's right way to approach it. You can think of it in terms of okay, what are all the risks that I'm taking if I'm using liquid staking? So there is a smart contract risk to it, right? So you're using a
Yeah,
smart
for sure.
contract. It's not kind of in the picture if you're just using native staking. So in terms of the smart contracts, I guess what you can do to analyze the risk is like first you can look at the audit reports, like drop smart contracts are obviously audited. Um, you can also, yeah, you can kind of just think about how it works, kind of fundamentally. And the liquid staking smart contracts are pretty straightforward, I would say. So basically, what happens is that instead of a user account managing staking, now there's this smart contract that manages this stake position. But how it operates is relatively simple, right? So you provide tokens as an input, then it allocates a stake across the validators, and it issues you a liquid stake token. And then when you want to withdraw, it kind of goes the opposite order. So at any point in time, there's this stake that sits with the validators as usual. And if I think like the really good thing about it is that the stake is like pretty static because you cannot withdraw anything immediately from stake, and so you have to wait for this 21 days. So if you think about kind of the worst case scenario, and if there's something wrong that happened to the smart contract, it is basically impossible to steal these funds immediately because they're staked on you anyways. So there's basically 21 days to deal with any possible attack that can happen. So I would say just as a category of the smart contracts, that's kind of not the most scary one. And I can't really recall a lot of or any attacks on or sizable attacks on liquid staking protocols. Yeah, but of course you're definitely taking some additional risk compared to just using native staking. That's a pretty mature space, so yeah, that's definitely not the biggest risk to take in crypto. But you have to be aware of that, and it's always a good idea to think consciously about what is the risk that you're actually taking. There's also like a few other consideration points. It's probably a good idea to think about liquid staking from the perspective of how you want to use these assets. So if you just liquid stake and hold, that's probably not the best way to use these protocols, because like typically like all the interchain liquid staking protocols would be taking 10% fee. So like including drop. So we also take 10% fee. I think like the right question is what does liquid staking enable? Like, do you want to pay this fee in order to, for instance, be able to sell your assets on a DEX immediately? Maybe if basically your long-term plan is to exit the position, or you think that there would be some triggers that would basically invite you to exit the position immediately, maybe you can use liquid staking protocol for it. But basically, the most appealing use cases is something in the world of DeFi. You can maybe participate in leverage staking, for instance, and then I think that's kind of the practical way of thinking about liquid staking and security, because then that's the really interesting use case. And then you participate in like multiple smart contracts. And then you also have to analyze basically the risk that you're taking by participating in these DeFi use cases. And I think compared to the smart contract risk, I would say my personal opinion is that probably it's more important to analyze kind of the risk that you take in DeFi. Um, yeah, but it's also kind of a good consideration point. But I think the question is right. You have to be aware of all the types of risks that you take. When you enter any DeFi positions, you have to think about how you're going to exit them, what can go wrong, what are the dependencies there. It's a good idea to think about, for instance, Oracle data that is used by the DeFi protocols and such. So from my perspective, maybe these are kind of the most practical kind of risk considerations, because if you just use liquid staking, you're not taking a lot of risk, but you're also not doing a lot of interesting stuff. So I'd rather kind of think one step further and think through kind of the whole use case that probably involves a few DeFi protocols. So you need to be thinking about like all of their audit reports, for instance, like what are the teams that were building them and so on.
Yeah, I asked that
So
the
that's
ah
from my
okay.
perspective, the right mindset.